Hello, everyone. Great to be live with you. Well, the U.S. State Department has just issued a high alert for American travelers worldwide as tensions are escalating between multiple countries just today, threatening America as the tensions in Israel rise. When Biden visited Israel, he pledged to give $100 million to Hamas. He also wants to the Gaza Strip. Okay. He also wants to donate to Israel. He's sending money to Gaza to, I guess, help care for the people who are still there. But he also wants to fund Israel, funding both sides. That adds to the tension. Real quick, I'm going to play a soundbite from the State Department on this, but also we're going to have Jason Shurka on in just a sec. He and I work together at Unified, but also he was in Israel when this war broke out, and he can answer any questions for you guys. So put your questions in the chat real quick. Here is the State Department today.
We have taken that measure because we've seen events on the ground. Let me back up and say, we are constantly assessing the safety and security of our personnel in every place where we operate overseas. We are constantly assessing the safety of the situation on the ground so we can give appropriate travel warnings and appropriate guidance to American citizens. We took the step in Lebanon because we've seen increased activity there that we thought warranted it. You've seen a number of protests around the U.S. Embassy, for example. And then earlier today, we issued a worldwide caution alert where we advised U.S. citizens that due to increased tensions in various locations around the world, the potential for terrorist attacks, demonstrations, or violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests, the Department of State advises U.S. citizens overseas to exercise increased caution. Jennifer,
of the American
there you go. If you are traveling, be cautious, especially they say if you are in a tourist area anywhere in the world. Be careful if you're in a tourist area. Fox News reporting Israel has arrested 63 Hamas operatives in the West Bank, but thousands of people have already died. And this is the deadliest in the past 5 conflicts between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, before we bring on Jason Shurka, real quick shout out to the sponsor of my coverage. The U.S. debt spike could ignite a long-term rally in gold. Since March of 2020, the U.S. added another $8 trillion in debt, and gold is up 50%. Now, with the Fed raising rates, the interest payment on our debt has surpassed $1 trillion annually. BRICS nations met last month, and oil-rich nations Saudi Arabia and the UAE have joined Russia, China, and India. 51% of Americans can't pay their credit card bills, which just surpassed $1 trillion for the first time in history. If this is Build Back Better, increased spending and regulation is likely to continue, with Yellen saying now that we can still afford to pay for 2 more wars. Buying gold and silver is a strategic play that several countries are doing today. Who's looking out for the little guy when the government doesn't? Isn't it time that you look at gold and silver? Call America's own precious metals company, National Gold Group. Check it out in my description. You'll always get best in class service from America's conservative precious metals leader. Mention my channel, Ivory Hecker. National Gold Group has a free IRA fee waiver program. On qualifying rollovers, call 888-617-5927. Get a free investor guide in my description. National Gold Group is a Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer. 888-617-5927. Remember, there's always a risk of loss. Past performance is not indicative of future results. With that being said, let's bring on Jason Shurka. Jason, how are you?
I am good. I'm good. And thank you for bringing me on today. I know this was last minute. You asked me a few hours ago if we can make this happen. And it's an honor every time I get to work with you.
And likewise. And thank you for coming on as things are escalating. Not only Hezbollah saying they're thousands of times more powerful than we thought, and we better watch out. That's Lebanon to the north of Israel, threatening Israel and the U.S. And then Iran. I believe it was Iran that said today that Israel needs to back off. Now, you were in Israel when all of this went down. I believe it was October 7th. Tell me about that.
Okay, so I'll give you the full story because it was funny. People heard that I was in Israel, and there were a lot of really beautiful comments, people reaching out and saying, be safe, please get out of there as soon as possible. And then you got this group of people that are like suspicious. why is Jason there? So I'll tell you why I was there. I was going to visit this girl, and it ended up turning out really well. And the war caused us to have to actually leave the country together. And now she's with me in Miami. So what brought me to
It's a
Israel?
love story.
What brought me to Israel was love. That's what brought me there. And it was so just a crazy situation of how the whole thing unfolded. So I landed there Friday, October 6th, 4 p.m. Israel time. I always say the time zones because I'm always somewhere else. But I landed at 4 p.m. in Israel. And that was really like 12 hours before everything broke out. So I landed, I did Shabbat dinner with my family. I do have an Israeli and Jewish background. So I have family that lives in Israel.
You're part
And
Israeli.
yeah. So my father is Israeli. My grandparents are from Iran. So technically I'm Persian and like my roots, but I'm Israeli as like the generation right above me because my father was born there.
Okay. So kind of both sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's still Iranian Jewish and Israeli Jewish because they're all sorts of kinds of Iranians, you know. So it's Persian Jewish, if you want to call it that, in terms of my backgrounds, and partly Yemenite as well, which is where my skin color comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. So just to give that background as well. So basically, I land there at 4 p.m. and I do Shabbat dinner with my family, and I'm all excited. And, you know, me and this girl are about to go on a trip. And finally, after a lot of work, we're about to take a few days and just travel the whole country. And I go to sleep that night, hoping to get over jet lag before it takes over me. And I did really, really well. And I wake up the next morning, perfect timing to overcome jet lag, to a million messages from everybody all around the world saying, "Are you okay? Are you alive? What's going on?" And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on right now. So I opened my phone and I just saw what was going on. And it turns out that there were a bunch of rockets that were shot into Israel by Hamas and, you know, all these things that were going on. And I said, you know, Israel always experiences this. It's like a yearly endeavor, you know, in terms of every single year, there's always this, and it lasts for a few days and everybody moves on. That's kind of it. So I didn't think much of it, but it was my first time that I was in the country while rockets were being shot. And I know that sounds crazy coming from America because we can't even fathom something like that. But that's the reality in the Middle East. And it's been the reality there for a very long time. So I didn't think much of it. I posted it a little bit. I moved on. And that's basically it. And then I go to breakfast that morning, and I want to share my experience over that period of 24 hours because it showed me a completely different perspective on how I think we need to approach this situation. And basically the way that it started is that morning I go and meet my family. We go to breakfast, and it was a very weird experience, and I didn't know how to feel and I didn't know how to act because while I was eating breakfast, suddenly you hear bombs going off in the distance.
Oh, wow. How close were you to the war zone?
Close enough where there were sirens where you had to go into bunkers every time those sirens went off.
Wow.
So I'm sitting at breakfast and you hear these rockets, you know, hitting each other in the sky right above your head. And I'm looking and I'm like, this is intense. And yet everybody around me is used to this. So maybe I shouldn't be worried. And then more news started coming out and more news started coming out. And suddenly you hear, you know, all these kids were killed and everything that was going on with the kidnapping and all that. And that's not something usual for a situation like this. It's usually a few rockets, the Iron Dome takes them down, and everybody moves on. I drive to go pick up a friend, and everywhere I look, and there weren't a lot of people walking on the street at that point, but everywhere I look after breakfast, there were just people crying on the street, sad. And that's when it started hitting me more and more. And I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe what's going on right now, especially never being, you know, in a situation experiencing something like this before. And then we got more information and more news about that whole, you know, desert party rave that they had with what was going on there and videos, and it was horrifying. And again, you're in a situation where you just don't know how to respond. Like, what do you say? What do you do? What do you think? And that night was the kicker for me because I'm in the hotel room and now it's a ghost town. Nobody's outside. And I have some music in the hotel room. And suddenly I hear something in the background. I pause the music and you hear sirens going off. I go out on the balcony and boom, you hear bombs going off right above your head, right above my head. And that's when we had to go to the bunkers. So we go in the bunkers and I saw like the distraught feeling that everybody's going through and what like in a way, I'll say traumatized me the most was I wanted to go get food and there was nowhere to get food. And I couldn't order room service because it was closed. So I went to the building next door. Now, you're not supposed to leave the building, but I didn't really have a choice. I wanted to go get food. I said, whatever, we'll go get food. So me and her go get food. And on our way from one building to the next, and this is when, everything hit me of like, what's really going on? There's nobody in the streets. There's no car in the streets. And she sees a car in like the distance driving with headlights. And the first response, her reaction was to take me and hide with me behind a wall in case that person was somebody coming to try and kill us. That's like the situation that I found myself in. And I went from sad to like angry, but it wasn't, I just see the whole thing differently. I wasn't sad or angry about, this whole Israel and Palestinian thing because I don't see it like that. I was sad and angry simultaneously that human beings can even get to that point in the first place. The fact that we've been played to such a point where we can go against each other in such a way, regardless of what you believe and what side you want to come up with, it doesn't change the fact that human beings are doing things to each other that should never be done to one another. And I'll tell you the truth, it's something that I'm still processing. And I'm probably going to continue processing over the next few weeks. And that's why I'm not talking about it much, because I'm not in a place to speak about something when I'm still in a place of there's trauma in the situation. It's like, what is going on? I've heard about this on the news. I've seen people speak about this on social media. You hear about wars all the time. But being there on the ground, at least for me and my own personal experience, it just broke my heart seeing that anybody can do anything to hurt somebody in that way. And it was tough. It was tough. And I ended up getting out of the country and we got out and now I'm back in Miami. And it's just something that I think we have so much to learn from. And I know people want to talk politics and people want to talk about I stand with Israel or I stand with Palestine. And no, I stand with people coming together and seeing through the individuals that try to cause us to fight against each other, because there's no reason why people can't live in the same place together without killing each other. There's no reason why we have to divide each other according to our religions or races or ethnicities or whatever it is. And I know some people will sit there and say that's spiritual bypassing and you have to honor the fact that this side did this and that side did that. That's not my job. I don't look at it like that at all. I see everything that's going on right now, not political whatsoever. Everything I do is not according to politics at all, because I think it's the greatest evil that the world has ever seen. Just like when you open this interview with Biden, everybody is funding both sides. So somebody wants this to happen. It's not this innocent thing of two sides fighting each other because one side is right and one side is wrong. If you have two, let's say you're a mother and you have two sons that don't like each other, are you going to keep giving them ammunition to fight each other if you really want them to stop? No. If you wanted them to stop, you would do things a whole lot differently. So somebody wants this to continue going on. And that somebody is not just a Democrat and is not just a Republican. That somebody is a human being or human beings with intentions to divide and conquer the world. And that's exactly what they were doing. And we're playing into their game. And that's what upsets me the most. And whenever I share that, and the reason why I've been silent over the past few days on social media about it is because anytime I share what I just said, all you see is both sides coming and trying to fight against each other as well. We're not ready to see what's being said over here, but nonetheless, it needs to be said.
Yeah, it's a very divisive topic right now, and I'm going to show some footage of protests, but also, so far, ABC is reporting that 3,700 Palestinians have been killed, and 1,400 Israelis have been killed. Thousands more have been injured. Was anyone affected?
Direct, like people that I know as
hurt or killed? Yeah.
Yes, I know them indirectly through friends that I've been with. Yes, many.
Oh wow.
Like many, especially from that desert party that was there. There were 250 people that were killed. That's another thing. You know, you want to have an enemy and fight somebody. I'm still against that, but go fight that person. The problem over here is there are people right now that they're going to history and they're saying, well, there's been 75 years of X, Y, and Z. Well, the matter of fact over here is that the 12-year-old that was killed does not know that. They don't come from that history. They're a 12-year-old that just wants to live their normal life. The 30, the 40, the 50-year-old doesn't know that history either. Because whether you're Israeli or Palestinian, everybody wants the same thing. They want a quiet life. They just want to live. And then it's the people in power that cause problems, generally politically speaking. And through that, you then have people coming and hurting each other and killing each other. So I hear a lot of people, just like you did now, you said 3,700 Palestinians were killed. And what'd you say, 1,700? How many? 1,500?
1,400 Israelis.
And 1,400 Israelis. All I would say is 5,100 human beings. Okay, that's how many people were killed. There's no reason to say there's 3,700 Palestinians and 1,400 Israelis. There were 5,100 for the majority innocent people that were murdered in cold blood for no reason whatsoever, because certain people got us to fight each other and hate each other. And that's what we need to see. People are not seeing that.
Right. Well, there was a big rally actually here in Houston where I live. There was a rally supporting Palestine, and about 3,000 people came out to it. Mm-hmm. You can see people lining the streets there. Pretty stunning. Now in Washington, D.C., Jews went out and rallied, and that made a lot of news. I'm sure you have probably seen this, some of that. Let me just play a little bit of that protest and get your reaction.
Go into the chair. Look at the real character.
So Jews wearing shirts that say "Not in our name" and signs saying "Ceasefire." What's your reaction to that protest?
My reaction to all protests is we have to stop protesting for one type of person. We have to start protesting, if we're going to do something like that, for a common cause. So again, you always see pro-Palestinian protests or pro-Israel protests or whatever it may be. Imagine there could just be protests saying, we don't want this to happen, and we want people to come together and live amongst each other and create peace.
Well, when I saw the signs in DC there at the Capitol, which, by the way, people got arrested for invading the Capitol yesterday. It happened again, guys. But anyway, so I mean, the signs that you see there say ceasefire. Very simple, one word, ceasefire. To me, that means they want people on both sides to live. But you heard someone in the background of that video say those are the real terrorists, and they're saying that these Jews are supporting Hamas, and that's like Jews back in the day supporting the Nazis. So there's a lot of divisiveness.
Yeah. Listen, I'll tell you the truth. We got a lot of work to do, a whole lot of work to do. There's nothing I can say right now that will fix this problem, because the problem is in nobody else other than the people. And maybe it's through tragedy that people are going to wake up. I don't know. I really don't know what to say anymore, other than I know what the destination could be. To get there is a whole different story, because right now we are living in a world where people are against each other. And even if you have a group of people that are coming and bringing the proper message to the world, let's say ceasefire, live in unity and all that, those people will still be attacked in a world like this, because the people that they're trying to preach to are not where they're at. So you're going to have a miscommunication, meaning this is a spiritual war. Now we're seeing it fought physically, with bombs and missiles and rockets and guns and explosives and all that. But this is a spiritual war. This is a war on information, on knowledge, on propaganda. It's confusing people, making people not know what to think anymore. And all that's ending up over here is people are fighting against each other. And again, it really doesn't need to be that way. It doesn't need to be that way at all. There's a lot of, Palestinians that I know. As a matter of fact, the guy that I'm friends with over here in Miami, I just went to the gas station. I'm friends with him. His name is Muhammad. He's a great guy. Every single time I go and get a car wash, we talk and we speak about how we're cousins and brothers and sisters and how all our people are fighting. And it's so dumb. But we've been played. That's what I see right now. We've been played. We've been played in many, many different ways, politically speaking, with certain people who have agendas. And until we see through that as we the people, this is going to continue. Now, if you ask me, by the way, all of this is orchestrated. This is not something by accident. Somebody wants this to happen, and there's an agenda put forth over here. I don't think that it's a coincidence that it's, a year before election time and everything that's going on. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here.
Who do you think's orchestrating it? Americans?
Okay, so let's go bigger. Can we talk about that here?
Yeah.
Okay. We have to stop using names of countries. Okay. Think about it like this. If you want to understand who's truly in power, imagine a soccer league, imagine FIFA, okay, the FIFA organization. And then there's all these other teams. There's Barcelona and Madrid and all those teams in between. Now, if you own a team and I own a team, I want my team to win and you want your team to win. But what's going on over here in terms of how the world actually works is there's somebody that owns the entire league. They don't care which team wins. They just want the teams to play. Because if the teams play, then you have competition. When you have competition, you have sides. And when you have sides, you have people buying tickets. And when you have people buying tickets, you have money and control. The same goes with countries in the world. America, China, Russia. We see it as this political game of different powers that are against each other. If you ask me, it's a game. The people that are pulling the strings and orchestrating what's actually going on here, they don't care which side wins because they're on both. They're on all. They own all sides. They just want there to be conflict so they can continue to control. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah. But that's pretty evil when lives are at stake and people are dying. Obviously, it's more than a game.
Oh, no. To these people, it's a game. Okay. There are people, you want to know basic things. Okay. Let's go back to, what was that car? There was a car, I think it was a Ford, I forgot which one, but they had a recall. They had to recall their cars because their gas tanks were exploding. You know what I'm talking about? It was years ago.
Oh, I think I heard of that. Yeah.
I forgot which model it was, but here's what we learned from that whole situation. You know how they decide whether they recall a car or not?
How?
Okay.
They wait till someone dies?
No, they don't care if somebody dies. They ask, okay, how many people own the car? How much will it cost us to recall the car? And based on our statistics of how many people are dying because we're not recalling it, how much will that cost us in court? And let's say recalling the car will cost them 40 million and not recalling the car will cost them 50 million in settlements for all the people that died, or 30 million in all the settlement. Whatever it is, whichever side will cost less, they'll do. They don't care about the people that are dying.
Wow.
They care about how much it's going to cost them. So if it's cheaper to pay off people in court because their loved ones died, they're going to do that as opposed to recalling the car because it saves them $10 million and their stock price isn't going to drop.
So
that's a game. That's
wow.
a game. Okay. That's a game of numbers and money. That's a game. There's no care in the world right now in terms of certain people in power for how many people are going to live or die. Generally, it's how much money somebody's going to make, how high their stock price is going to go, or how much control they're going to be able to retain through what they're doing. And we've seen it in public court cases like that one with Chevy or Ford or whoever it was. So if it happened there in the public, why can't it happen in the private behind the scenes? It's the same thing.
So who makes the most money in war?
Well, did you see Northrop Grumman and all their stock prices and how much they made?
Oh, I didn't.
Okay. And you should look them up. They went up like 10 or 15% over the past.
Oh my gosh.
And you know who owns the greatest amount of shares in companies like that? BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street. And the people who own that, if you go and follow the money, are some of the biggest families in the world that will never go public and speak. And that's where you're speaking about Rothschilds and Rockefellers and all of that.
Wow.
So it's a very clear, chain that's going on here. But my favorite type of people are the people that can't believe what I'm saying because they can't even comprehend that a person would be that evil. And the reason why I say those people are my favorite type of people is because they can't comprehend that in the world because they would never do that themselves. You can only recognize in others what you can recognize in yourself. A person that's naive enough to believe that it's impossible for a person to be that evil is a very good person in their heart. And that's why those people are my favorite people.
Wow, that's so true. Okay, I told people they could ask you anything, so I want to get some questions in. Let's see. What's this one? Abel says, "Why has Egypt kept the doors to Gaza closed for decades against their own?"
Not just Egypt, every Arab country, every Muslim country surrounding Israel. Why? Think about it like that for a second. It's a very good question. Why aren't they taking their own people in? If they're already seeing it as their own people, why aren't they helping them? Because there's something wrong with the picture. There's something bigger going on here. That proves my very point. If you look at Israel on a map and then you look at all the countries surrounding it, look at the landmass, look how many people live in all the countries surrounding it. What they're really fighting over is religion. They're fighting over Jerusalem. They're not fighting over anything else other than Jerusalem and the significance of that, which is religion. This is a religious war.
Now, do you think your family came to America to avoid these religious wars that have happened for thousands of years? Is that why you guys came?
Well,
I mean, I assume you were born in America.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York. So yes.
But it was your dad, right?
Yeah, my father came here when he was very young. He came here when he was, I think, 15 or 16 years old. And my whole family basically moved here, and then some moved back to Israel. I can't speak for my whole family because, my family's big, and I'm sure that they have their own perceptions and perspectives as well. But in terms of my immediate family, yes, that's part of the reason why there's a lot more opportunity here. It's a completely different world in America. It's a very free place. At the same time, we're also very connected to our roots, so every time I go to Israel, I love going to Jerusalem. But for me, it's not a Jewish thing. For me, it's a spiritual thing. I see it as more of a connection to God, just as much as a Muslim or a Christian would have a connection to God or anybody else. It's connecting to something deeper than a religion. That's how I see it. I personally don't like religion very much. I see it as more of the spiritual side of things.
Okay, looks like there's another question here.
Sure.
Jason, apart from admiring you and your mission, which I love, I don't get the current threat to U.S. citizens. U.S. is supporting Israel. Israel allowed conflict to happen. What's the crick and agenda?
Why is there a current threat to U.S. citizens?
Yeah.
Because they want there to be one.
Who wants there to be one?
The same people that made 9/11 happen. If you think that on September 11th of 2001, a guy that couldn't drive a Cessna took over a 747 and flew it perfectly into a building, you're living in La La Land. And that's not about Democrats or Republicans behind it, because some people hear what I say and they say, oh, it's politics. Who is in power then? It's not about one side or another. It's about good versus evil. There are globalists, if you want to call it that. Big picture. They run the world and they're behind a lot of things. All of these things are orchestrated from beginning to end. So I know it's hard to understand, because just like in Israel right now, my Jewish friends and my Israeli friends, they can't comprehend that their government would ever do such a thing. Just like Americans cannot comprehend that their government would ever do such a thing. And the truth is that's not our government or their government. It's the people that call the shots and pull the strings behind the government. And that's what people aren't understanding. The Bush family and the Clinton family, on two opposite political parties, are very, very good friends. They're very good friends with very, very similar agendas. But when one came out, the other one came in, because you need a seesaw in the way that, unfortunately, politics works. That's why I don't touch it, because it's a game, it's a show, it's a circus that they're creating for us, and we're playing into it. So is there a threat to U.S.? There's a threat to anybody around the world right now, so long as certain people want there to be a threat. And if tomorrow leaders came together and said, we want peace and we're going to create peace, there will be peace. There doesn't need to be war. Somebody wants there to be war.
So listening to this as an average person, it seems helpless. You feel like your power's taken away. So what can we do as average humans to own our power and make the world better somehow.
100%. I think it starts with awareness. People need to be aware of how things work. The only reason why we got to this mess in the first place is because people bought into a game. If you can see through the game, if you can understand how the game works, you won't play it the same way that we're playing it now. And when you do that, the game can only work when people lack awareness, because when we lack awareness, we can be controlled. So if we want to get to a point where we're not controlled anymore and we're truly living free, liberated lives, we need to be aware to a point where we can't be deceived. So what I'm talking about right now, I know it's a hard pill to swallow for many. I totally get that. And that's why I don't always speak about it, because I don't know when people are ready to hear these things. And then I end up getting a lot of the backlash for it because everybody's coming from a different place of how they see the world, which I honor. I totally get that. But at the end of the day, the facts are the facts. And if you want to get to a point of living free, liberated lives in America and around the world as a whole, we need to be aware of how the powers that be are controlling the world.
Good point. I love that. Thank you so much for your insight, Jason. I know you got to run, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I'm glad you're safe and out of Israel.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ivory, keep up the good work. You're awesome. I love everything that you're doing on Unified TV.
Yes, people, go watch my content on Unified TV. It's the new uncensored streaming platform. All the stuff that YouTube would delete, basically the best content, has to go to Unified. So phenomenal information on there. So guys, link in my description to join Unified and watch my content there. And then also Jason's a YouTuber. I put his YouTube in my description as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Ivory. Thank you for everybody who joined in. And I hope that we can overcome this madness sooner rather than later. The only answer over here is coming together.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Jason. Talk to you soon. All right. Bye.